Welcome, Amy. Thanks so much for joining the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today about the expansion journey of Oracley because you're in the process of expanding and in the process of opening your own studio in New York. And I have so much respect for you that you're willing to share that. And I think that's so valuable for others.
Thank you for having me. I think it's also nice to share where founders are in the process of building as well, because I also really appreciate that when I hear other founders' success stories, but also, the things that got them there. You know, it's like the journey is not linear. And I think it's good to talk about the steps, the process, the mistakes, the learnings, the rerouting, so that, I could definitely share a lot of that today.
We're going to talk about the early days. But before we do, can you explain what Oracley is for the people who don't know it?
So Oracley is my healing studio in Amsterdam. It's focused on self-healing and an emotional wellness space. The tagline is a guided healing space because I really wanted to create a space that was helping people to connect with their own answers. So that came about because 6 years ago, I was working in corporate marketing for like 12 years of my life. And I was very, very disconnected from myself. I didn't know that at the time, but I was really in the logic and not so much in the felt sense. And basically, long story short, I went for a burnout. And it really woke me up to the fact that I was really disconnected, very unhappy. I wanted to create a space that was helping people to connect to answers. But what I also recognize is that we often outsource a lot of our answers to other people. So when I was going into my deep process of self-healing, I was kind of missing this space that bridged the gap between spirituality and wellness. And that's what I wanted to create in Amsterdam. And it's where I live. I'm from the UK, but I was based in Amsterdam and doing a lot of this work for clients already. And then they were like, you should really open your own space, even though it's a lot of work to be, putting money, time, energy into a physical retail space. It is very rewarding because you have human connection with people. And I think we're only going to need more of these spaces, which is also why we're expanding as well.
Yeah. No, and in Amsterdam, it also resonated with a lot of people because the space that you have in Amsterdam quickly became a very popular, award-winning studio. And now you're expanding to New York and planning to open a studio in New York. Why New York?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a very long story, but I mean, we really looked at what makes sense for us in terms of expansion. I mean, the vision is to have a guided healing space in every city in the world. And it's a big step for us to go from Amsterdam to New York. However, from a strategic approach, I was really adamant that I really want to keep one location per city and not have multiple locations in a city. So we looked at the market and we looked at the wellness industry. Globally, the wellness economy has reached 7 trillion in 2024, and mental and emotional wellness is the highest growth sector annually. It's around 12% growth annually. And the US market is the biggest market, essentially. I think 125 billion or something opportunity for mental and emotional wellness. So that was one reason. In terms of New York as a city, because the US is kind of our target in general, but New York, we were kind of tossing up between New York and the West Coast. I went to both sides of the country. So I really felt it for myself. And what I did feel was that New York is so overstimulated. And Oracley has really become in Amsterdam this space of rest. And it's quite a radical thing to rest. But we also did on a much more practical level, we also did a social media split test. So we really tested the data between the West Coast and the East Coast and New York. We had the strongest number of people signing up to the wait list. So there was lots of things that validated the decision. So it was also kind of leading by intuition, but then validating through data, which is, I think, also how I try to operate the business in general.
I'm really excited for Oracley to be in New York because, I think New York is the best city in the world, but it's definitely a very stimulating city. So you need these spaces to also relax and take a moment. And you already mentioned a lot of data and numbers and different cities you looked at. Can you walk us through the initial market research process that you did?
I mean, to go back to when we started the process of wanting to scale, I would say the main thing that we did was we really looked at like, what is the issue? Like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve?
Yeah.
And then what's the reason why, that we need to have Oracley? And really for us, looking at it from like a macro perspective, it's burnout. Like burnout is a huge growing issue. And there's, like I was sort of saying at the beginning, like there's a lot of emphasis in the wellness industry on, these kind of outer fixes, but we don't often look at our emotions so much. Like there's also a big focus on mental wellness, but not so much on emotional. And there are a few brands now, like in New York, actually, like the Othership. There's a few others that are really focusing on emotional wellness. So we're kind of positioning ourselves as that. And then, that really informed our pitch deck. So we created a pitch deck. That was a big part of the process. It was me kind of coming out to the US and starting to build a network, just sort of following the threads of people.
I'm also interested because what we see a lot when companies are looking at the US market, that sometimes they copy and paste the issue that they're solving in Europe to the US market, but the US market does work a bit differently, or maybe the customer thinks a bit differently. You're mentioning, so the problem is the burnout that you're solving. Did you have to make any changes for the US market, or did you see any different trends there that you had to adjust your pitch deck for?
That's a good question. Yes and no. I think there's been times where we've been tempted to follow the trends because we are predominantly a in-person space. We do have plans to go online for on-demand. And I think we could have fundraised it a lot quicker if we'd been a tech-first space. However, there is data coming out now to show and to say that people are going to need more of these physical spaces, and that is going to be one of the things that in the wellness industry people are going to be wanting. And that's only just caught up in the last year. So we thought about it, and we've refined, like I said, we've refined the pitch deck quite a few times. And I do think, honestly, it was the same with Amsterdam. I think you can always have an idea about what you think the customer wants, but until you're actually in the market, until you're actually doing it, you don't really know. So I guess the framework that I have for the classes and the way that the New York studio is going to be set up will be slightly different. So we have like our signature classes, let's just say, in Amsterdam. We're going to replicate some of those in New York, but we are also going to create new things as well to be more locally relevant. So I think we will also have to see how things go. Like I would love to hope that things are going to go exactly the way I think they will, but I highly doubt it. And I think that's something I've really learned as a founder in the last 3 years, having Oracley in Amsterdam, is that you have to be able to pivot and change. And obviously you want to stay true to like the basis of the business. But, I might come to New York and then something really hits with this city, and then we want to build on that. So, I think there's room for maneuverability.
It's also a process of starting and then testing and making adjustments as needed.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think we'll really know until we get there, until we get started. But then we already have the waitlist building. So we have hundreds of people on the waitlist already. So I know that there's a demand. So that's already a good sign.
And you've recently also added a co-founder, Delphine. So congratulations. And Delphine has worked for EY for many years. And she's helping you to get the foundation right and also make sure that the financial structure and the forecasting is set up right. Can you share more about that process behind the scenes and how to set up the right foundation?
I mean, it was just me as the founder for 2.5 years. And to be honest, it was fine for a while because it was just like one studio. But then when we're transitioning into these big plans, it was very obvious that we needed someone else to complement my skill set. So my background is in marketing, as I mentioned, and I also am very deeply embedded in the healing work. So I'm also a teacher, and like the kind of teacher aspect is my strong point. Delphine came in actually as a host to Oracley a few years ago. So she was also kind of taking a break from EY. I think she was also quite burnt out. I hope she won't mind me saying that. And she was also looking for like space to rest and kind of rebuild what she wanted to do after being a partner for so many years. And for a while she was like, I can help you. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And I was like, fine, honestly, the finances just like terrify me. And then she came on to my advisory board. Yeah, and now what Delphine is focused on is, the financials, looking at all the projections. She's also like very much in the data in Amsterdam, because of course, as we scale, we still need to make sure that Amsterdam is improving and growing. And I'm just super grateful to have someone like her who's, as we're building a company that's like very focused around rest and nervous system regulation. It's also a hard reality, I think, that, I think every founder who's listening to this knows. If you're growing a business, it's not very easy. And I've really, especially in the last year with Delphine coming on board, feel a lot different in my own nervous system and in where I want to be feeling as a founder. As much as I really work really hard, I also feel much better.
Yeah. Is there anything, because I know that Delphine also spent a lot of time on creating the financial picture and overview for the New York location. In Amsterdam, your studio was profitable quite quickly. I imagine for New York, the initial investment is much more than in Amsterdam. Is there anything you can share about those numbers or the expectations for New York?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a bigger risk but greater potential reward. And I think that's why we're going to New York, is that the market is there and we want to grow and scale quicker. New York has so much opportunity, however, opportunity costs. So we've had to already invest a lot of money into making sure the company is already pre-set up before we're even there.
Can you share more about the foundations you've set up so far? So the legalities, entity, visa.
Yeah, there's so much pre-work that's had to go into expanding into a new market. And I think, the US is probably one of the most expensive markets that we could possibly target. Everything in the US, as you know, Flora, costs a lot more than what it does to set up a business in the Netherlands, for example. We've had to do a lot of work. I'm really lucky on my team. I have definitely a really good team of advisors, and one of those advisors is a lawyer. So that's been very helpful to have someone really look through all of our terms and the legalities of things. So I've saved a ton of money from having her on the team. And just the expertise is also, super helpful. So we've had to basically look at the structuring of the company. So how we run through the different entities as we scale. So that's something we've had to do. We're still in the process of continuing with that as well. I know when we get going in New York, we also have to make sure a lot of things go through a lot of legal checks. So that's higher cost than what I was used to with setting up the business in Europe. So there's a lot of pre-work that's had to go into setting up the business in the country before we even get there, even like the taxes that we've had to pay last year, even before the company was operating. But it means, applying for a visa. So there's just so many things we've had to do even before we're there. Now, the more like risks that I'm taking, the more I'm getting used to continuing to take risks that are calculated. I had to take a risk to open my first business. At the time, for me, that was massive. Like I put about 50K of my own personal money into opening up a business that I didn't even know at the time that the concept would work. And I took that gamble and I had that feeling that it would work. So I went for it. And now it's the same thing.
So you're basically also saying that risk taking is something you can practice. And the more that you do it also, the better you get at it.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think this is the biggest test for me. It has been growing a business is growing yourself. It's that kind of cliche thing that we hear as founders a lot, but it's so true. Like every test that you go through, you'll have to build more resilience in yourself as a person.
And tell us about the location scouting, because you already mentioned that you've learned so much about real estate in New York and the world of real estate in New York. How many studios have you looked at so far, and what has the process been like?
Yeah, I think it's like with everything. We're getting more and more clear on what we want as we go. So like when we started, we were really looking at certain things. Actually, when we started, we were really looking at these huge kind of big presence flagship locations. And actually, I think we got a little bit lost in the excitement the reality of what we want to do is to create things that are accessible to the public, like create more accessibility with emotional wellness. And we don't actually need to have these kind of big elite spaces. I want to make sure that if you walk into an Oracley in anywhere in the world, you're going to get that brand consistency. So actually what's happened now is that we're really leaning into more spaces that look and feel quite similar to Amsterdam. They're bigger in square footage, but that we actually kind of carry through what we've built here. It's been really interesting and really helpful to get a lay of the land coming out to New York, speaking to people, speaking to other founders, and also knowing when we might be getting ripped off as an outsider, because there's, the New York real estate is no joke. Like you really need to be a little bit more like a shark.
Yeah. How are you noticing that?
I think people are going to try and sell you things that are unfinished, and then you have to really look with a fine-tooth comb, like go through like what is going to be actually given to us, what are the things that we might need to pay for. Is it a listed building? Is it in like a place where we might have to get permits? And there's all sorts of laws as well about accessibility that are just not present in Europe. Obviously, the sue culture is much bigger in the US as well. So it's like you have to go through things in a lot more detail. So yeah, there's been a lot of learnings around that as well. We're currently like looking at a space now where we're negotiating on, but we also had another space before that we were negotiating on. So I think it's just like, yeah, I know that we'll get the right space when we're supposed to.
Do you have advisors or who's helping you with those negotiations and really going through the fine print?
So we have like a broker that we're working with. So the broker will kind of go through the things on that. And then we also have a lawyer that we have got like prepped to work with, like a US lawyer. And then obviously I've got a lawyer on my advisory board. So that's also really helpful. There's a few other founders as well that have done the kind of same, they've had a studio model concept. So I've also been speaking to a few other founders to get advice. So yeah, I really think like the network is also very helpful to just get different perspectives and listen to other people as well.
And we spoke about risk appetite and of course, having a physical location and committing to a physical location is a bigger risk. What are you noticing in New York, what the average minimum time is that you have to rent a space?
I think roughly like 5 years is the minimum that we're looking at. It really, and this is also the thing, like with the landlords, it's much more of a personal relationship versus in Europe. So every landlord is so different in New York. Some of them are going to help more with the build out. Others are going to require you to have like a longer lease deposit. And the deposits are much higher, obviously, because the rent is much, much higher. So that's been a little bit of a shock, I guess. But yeah, and because I'm not American as well, there's also that barrier. So basically what it comes down to is the landlords want more cash. Let's be honest.
Because I wanted to ask, we help a lot of European founders who expand to the US, and in many different aspects you come across that you're not American, you don't have a credit score or social security number. How is that experience for you as a foreign company renting a space?
It's much more difficult. But again, I think it just comes down to the landlords. And the good thing is that we have a pre-existing business in Amsterdam. So that helps. But then really what it is coming down to is we would just need to give them more cash. Like we need to give them more deposit. So we're negotiating currently, but it's at least 6 months deposit for a location. To
compensate for that risk of not local.
Indeed. And we need to show all the projections. We need to show them the fundraise as well. So there's all sorts of things that we have to do with the due diligence, but it's also ongoing, so I'm sure there's going to be many more things that we need to present. It's the fun part.
And you mentioned already that it's also about having relationships with the landlords and getting to know them, and I think that's actually what I wanted to ask you about, because I feel like that's a big part that a lot of companies underestimate about the US market, that it's very relationship driven and it's all about knowing the right people and spending a lot of time networking.
Yeah, it's so different. I mean, like the network is so key, and it's hard to explain to someone from Europe if they haven't really been spending much time in the US from a business point of view, how important the network is. And I wasn't really sure until I started to go out and do it myself. It's also building trust. I think that making sure that people trust me and understand like what I'm building, and also already kind of getting the right people around, because I think I've also heard this from other founders that have gone into new markets, that they didn't have that network and then they go to open. And I know that it's going to really help to have people who are excited already about Oracley coming, and they'll tell their friends. I think that's how Oracley Amsterdam also was very successful. It's word of mouth. I know that we're going to need to put more marketing budget into New York because it's New York, but I think creating community in New York is also really, really important. I think more so than Amsterdam.
What are other strategies for getting people in the door once you have the location?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll do a lot of activations with influencers, with people in the wellness industry. We'll also put money into marketing for sure. I think mostly online marketing. And yeah, doing more pop-ups and activations, like probably some collaborations with, like I just came to the US just recently and did the collaboration with the Silhouette Method. So I think it's also working with other studios where we do like similar but different things.
And we already spoke about the money part a couple of times now in your experience with fundraising, but I want to dive a bit deeper into that. You've already mentioned, I think, that it's not your favorite part of the process. Can you share more about your learnings?
Yeah, I mean, we need loads of time. I've definitely got a lot of learnings from it. I think that fundraising, it's really what I wish I'd done if I could go back in time, is I would look at how people have fundraised in this specific sector. Sounds obvious now, but I think there's a perception of what fundraising is. And even now, when I speak to, just everyday people think investment or an investor is a one type of person. For my business and what I'm building at this phase of the business, VC route is not right for what we need at the moment. And an investor actually at the moment for us is someone who's investing like 10K to 100K, which is still a lot of money for most people, but it's not that they need to be like, they're not actually all like millionaires, these people. They're kind of like high net worth individuals. And I kind of wish that I'd had this kind of education process about the different kind of investment. And also being a woman in the world of fundraising is just more difficult. And I went in knowing this, but I didn't realize how much more difficult it was.
How have you experienced it, that it was more difficult?
It's just in terms of like I would say it's more like the VCs. They don't really give you a look in, to be honest. And it's much more difficult to get into rooms. But I think that's also coming back to the network piece. Like, I think men are much better at building the network before they need to be in the business. Originally, we were looking into doing a crowdfunding. And just to be super honest, like, I didn't really want to go into that route because I was like quite scared of like the public seeing us fundraising. And then from what we've learned and what we've discovered about the type of investors, it's actually been the investors so far are all, well, actually, that's not true. Almost all the investors that we've had so far have been to Oracley. So they've really been to the studio and they love it so much and they want to see it grow. So it just has made sense for us to come back to looking at crowdfunding and getting the community involved. And like that actually really does feel better to think that the community now can be part of something. But it's been quite a challenge for me as a founder, like to show up, even just recording this podcast now, it's like being in the in-between. It's not the success yet. And it's really hard to keep putting yourself out publicly when you're in the in-between. And that's I think something that we don't talk about so much as founders that are moving from like the startup to the scale up. It takes a lot of energy to fundraise. So it's definitely not my favorite part, but I know from so many other founders founders that I've spoken to now in my network that it's none of their favorite parts.
Yeah.
You know, the founders want to be doing the work, you know, they want to be in the business, but the reality is to grow, you need to be raising money. And I think that goes for most businesses out there. So I'm getting more used to it now, but I'm really excited to be building again, you know, to be like building what is going to help people.
And I like what you're saying. So you're also saying that, really preparing also the type of investor you're looking for and the type of money that you need helps you to then target those investors so that you're not spending at least too much energy or time on investors that are not a match.
Yeah, and I think it's also like investors can come in all sorts of shapes and forms. I think I had this like idea about what an investor is, and I think they're mainly just normal people. Actually, like the investors that I've known now, you know, they're high net worth individuals, but they're just really nice people. And I think like what I would do differently now is also like put the energy back on me. Like I think at the beginning of the fundraising journey, I was very keen and eager, but now I'm like, no, like I really understand the value of what we're building, and I want to make sure like the right people are around. And as I said before, like there was a few opportunities that we had, but it would have been the wrong money, you know. So it's like figuring out who are the type of people that you want on your team, because also they are going to be part of the cap table and involved.
And that's a good point, because that's indeed also what we discussed. We had a trade mission in London, and there we had a founder on the panel, and she also said, like, really prepare the questions that you have for the investors that you're talking to, see how much time they're willing to give you and advice and input.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's also your business, your baby, and you should also select carefully.
Definitely.
You mentioned before that you put 50K of your own money into the Amsterdam studio. How much are you raising for the New York studio?
Yeah, we're raising 500K for the New York studio. We already have some pre-commitments from angel investors, so the rest we're hoping to get from the crowdfunding. And yeah, I mean, that's to get us started, really, to get our footprint in New York. That will cover essentially the fit costs, the build outs, you know, buying all the props, the instruments, the team that we need as well, some of the legal aspects that we still need to cover. Oh, it also gives us runway, so 6 months runway as well. So we need to make sure that we've got good runway. And then, the plan is to really get that New York space going and have that for a year. And then we'll start to fundraise again to expand.
Stops.
No, it doesn't. And I think we want to do that because we do want to grow. So the plan will be to fundraise again to increase to 5 more studios. So we want to try and aim after we have New York and that footprint to have 1 studio per year. So we have quite ambitious targets as a team.
And that's amazing. Now, how can people support?
Yeah, so the crowdfunding is about to go live. Crowdfunding should be running in July, August 2026. And it's cool because we've just put the terms so that the people who are investing are going to be getting equity in the business. So I'm really happy about that. They can kind of really have a piece of Oracley, you know, and be really at the start of what we're building. So it's very cool, very exciting.
And it doesn't get more community than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks so much, Amy. That was a great episode, and I can't wait to do this again in a year from now, maybe even from the Oracley studio in New York.
Yes, that would be amazing. Thank you for all your support as well, Flora, and giving us visibility.
Yeah, we're going to share all the details for the crowdfunding. So we'll share that in the episode notes, and we'll also share it online so that you can also support the crowdfunding. And if you're a company that wants to learn more about how to do business in the US, you can always reach out or look at tabsinc.com.
Thank you so much.